Hey everybody, and welcome to today's podcast. A little update on myself, because you might be interested, who knows. It is currently the 22nd of March. We are hopefully going to be moving forward with the next phase of coming out of lockdown. Let's hope that a couple of knobheads that decided to smash up a police station of all things, don't fuck that up. So fingers crossed, everybody. I have been very slack recently with my eating and exercise. To be honest, had zero interest in exercising, not movement. As we said before, movement and exercise, they're very the same, but they're different. I'm more interested in moving than I am exercise. My other half has actually decided to get back into the habit, and that's inspired me. Also, with the warmer weather coming, I'm probably going to start surfing as well as doing more skateboarding and paddleboarding. So I want to be optimal for that. So, it's very much a case of moving to do better with the sports I enjoy doing. Hockey will be coming back soon, hopefully, so I can start running around a bit and want to just be more optimal for that. So it is day one again. Little point before we start: if you are in the mindset right now that things have let slip, things aren't particularly as tight as they were in your routine, I don't mean body wise, as in your food and diet and stuff, rather than try and compensate, this is something I saw today, very good idea from another personal trainer, don't compensate, just go back to basics, which is what I'm doing. It's like, right, get your food nailed down, keep it simple to start with. You can make it more elaborate when you've got your rhythm down. Just start doing some movements again. I was out all day yesterday skateboarding, having a great time of it. And now I've got a set of movements I want to do that are going to be better for the stuff that I want to do. So rather than trying to figure out what exercise is best, I would say figure out what you want to do. Figure out, what you enjoy sport-wise, even if it's just a movement you do or an activity. And just try and find out, what can you do more of to make that better. If there's a particular set of exercises that you enjoy doing, try and do as many different variations as possible, because at the end of the day, movement is the most important thing over exercise, because exercise is in fact just movement. It's just a bit more organized. So don't try and compensate. Don't try and do anything drastic. Let's just take it back to square one. Get your food sorted. Just pick a few movements. Even if it's just walking 10 minutes a day extra, that's, if you do that over 7 days, that's a lot of time you can bring back to just getting some walking doing. Any movement is going to be great, and just get your food now, then you'll be fine. You don't have to do anything drastic. So that's kind of where I am at with that. So today is going to be broken into 2 topics. These are things that have been brought up a while ago. Obviously, there's been other subjects we've covered so far, so we're going to kind of come back to them, because this, I think, is very important and poignant at the moment with some of the anxiety things I've been dealing with clients and bits and pieces. I'm going to go into that in a bit more detail in another podcast. I'm just going to try and formulate that a little better for everybody. So the 2 topics we're going to talk about today are: one, loss of identity after sport or a job, and the other one is pills, potions, fat burners, slimming, shakes, etc. So let's first of all start with the losing identity after sport. Now, there's a few factors that come into this. It's common for people, generally males, a little more, because if you have listened to the Men's Mental Health podcast, if you haven't, please watch it. It is probably one of the best ones I've done. That and why anxiety and exercise are the same. They're 2 poignant ones that really stuck out with me and really helped me mold the way I train and help explain things to people. But men are very task orientated. Our title and our role is very important to us, because it gives us a sense of being, which is why lockdown has obviously made a lot of people feel like they don't know who they are anymore, because they haven't been able to do their job, their purpose. It is generally an overall human thing. Women are just as likely to feel this way, but I would say if you had to put it on a percentage scale, men would top it just a little bit, probably, because we are a bit more task orientated. We have to have things that we have to do. So loss of identity after sports or a job. But let's talk about sports, because that's what the question was about, but this does also come into jobs as well. So with a sport, it's interesting, because sports are something that if you get good at it, it is based upon your skills. You cannot be average and play at top level. It doesn't work like that. Well, you might get there until your averageness is been made apparent, and then you'll usually drop out of that professional area for it. And it also depends on the sport you play, the bubbles around it, and things like that. So we're going to break that down and go from there. So the first thing the point we're going to look at on losing your identity after sports. So the first point we're going to look at is, when did you start? If you started this sport from a very young age and it was shown that you had potential for it, that's all you've really known. Yes, there's school and other things like that, but if you were picked from a young age, or you were scouted, or it was something you showed promise in and you were encouraged or pushed to pursue that, from the longest time you can remember, depending on when you came out, obviously, that's been a huge part of who you are. You were such and such who played such and such. That was your identity. Well, you weren't just a school kid. You weren't just a friend or a son or something. You were also this person that played a role in a team, in a sport, or if it's tennis or any of the solo games, golf, you're showing promise. You're the kid that's good at golf, the kid that's good at tennis, etc., etc. So you have spent the longest period of time being this person, honing this skill set. You've made it part of who you are. So when you come out of that, because you've dedicated your time to it, there hasn't been much other time spent on building kind of who you are, really. Also, this ties into the next part, which is the level at which you played, performed, competed at. Now, if you're competing at a grassroots level, which is the most I've ever got, I got into sports quite late, so I've never experienced this because I had other things that made me me, and this is something that I do tend to advise my clients on, and I'll make a point of this in a minute. If you're competing at top level, there's always a means of progression because you're that good. So if you're playing at the top and you've been playing or competing from a young age, the key point of this is the amount of time actually spent in training and competing. So if you've spent all of your free time outside of education, maybe even sometimes in education, because depending on how your system works or whether you've been able to leave to compete or whatever, you've spent a hell of a lot of time in a competitive zone, training for being competitive. And as I've said before, there's not been much free time for just you. I had a friend who cycled for Great Britain when he came over. He came over from South Africa when I was in year 8, and he cycled for England. He was a very, very good cyclist. And he spent quite a lot of time outside of school, down the track, doing road runs, training, riding his bike, etc., etc. So his balance wasn't too bad, but we've known other kids that went on to do, for kids it's mainly these sort of like athletics in the UK where you can get into it quite early, because if you can run, you can run. I can't run. That's not to simplify it, but yeah. So there's a lot of that in there, in which your only thing you've ever known, the only way you've spent your time, is in that sport. So if all of a sudden you stop playing, you haven't built up a buffer, or you haven't created anything else that sets up your identity. So that's why it can be very, very difficult especially if you started from a very early age, or for the longest period of time that's all you've done, and you've not missed out because obviously you were doing it for a purpose, but you've put aside building up those other relationships, those other skill sets and things, because you've always had to focus on the said thing. The next part, and this is probably a bigger one, is how you actually left the sport. Because depending on how you left will have a huge impact on how you feel about no longer playing. So, for instance, if you voluntarily left, which happens a lot with young kids who played a sport from a young age and then become teenagers. Was what happened with my friend. He basically discovered girls, and he wanted to be able to spend more time being a kid. Now, luckily, his parents are fantastic. They're very much like second parents to me. I grew up alongside them. They were very supportive, and they realised that, if he wasn't happy doing it anymore, that he didn't have to do it. So he, like many kids, and it happened to a young girl, a girl that I went to college with. She was a gymnast, but a great gymnast. But she was like, I'm spending all my life doing gymnastics, and you guys are having a good time, and I feel like I'm not doing it anymore. It can be very difficult if you are not steered in the right direction, allowed that balance. if you have pushier parents, if you have a coach that's on your back all the time and you're competing at a high level, it can be very difficult to see the world passing you by and you not being part of it. I mean, yes, you have the accolades and everything else, but it's a bit different. So if you've left voluntarily, you tend to be okay with leaving the sport because it's something you can dip in and out of. You know, my friend still cycles, he still enjoys it. He's just turned it into a leisure activity rather than a competitive one. The young girl, she still does gymnastics. It's still something that she did, but she moved it more into dance and musical theatre because we did performing arts in college. So if you voluntarily leave, it can be a little bit bittersweet, but you've usually left of your own accord because you want to go and pursue something else. And that's generally quite easy to deal with. So if you voluntarily left a sport, you may not fully understand some of the different feelings when you see other people that have left. You know, you see this in conversations sometimes. So yeah, I just had enough. You know, I just wanted to live my life. I wanted to pursue something else. Women as well. Or sometimes if they want to have children. Now, some of them return to sport, and that's great. We should encourage them to return back to sport. But a lot of them go to the point where they play competitively and they go, you know what, I want to settle down and have kids. And, you know, as a father of two, it's exhausting. It's very hard to dedicate your time to sport at an elite level if you are raising children as well, because they have to take up a lot of your time. And even if you take some time out, it can almost be difficult to get back into it again, etc., etc. Because the things with sport as well is that there's always more people coming up to replace you. You don't stay at the top very long. That's the whole point of being competitive, and you should stay there. So if you do decide to take some time off to raise your children, which is nothing wrong with that at all, and it happens to guys as well, you know, this isn't just a gender split, it's, you know, men do it as well. I stopped playing sports and things when I started having kids because I actually spent the first 7 years of being a dad not doing much else other than working and looking after my kids, which is why I do more now. And I encourage my other half to do so because our kids are old enough that they can, you know, they've got their clubs and that they do because they enjoy it. We've got our stuff that we do because we enjoy it. So we've found a balance again. But if you left voluntarily, you're generally okay with it. The next one, injury. Injury is, as last week's podcast, so listen to that because we'll go into what happens over the process of an injury. Injury robs people. It really does rob you of playing in a competitive sport. And the worst thing is that you can injure yourself in training. You can get injured actually playing the game. It can be due to people not following the rules, which is awful. I remember doing kickboxing tournaments where I got sucker punched after the bell rang and I dropped my guard and this guy nearly broke my jaw off because he sucker punched me with a really heavy-handed right hook that it was on point, but he wasn't. It was a semi-contact tournament. It was a display of skill. I dropped my guard because the bell went and got absolutely right hooked across the face with the slack jaw, and it was awful. So I got injured. Obviously, I'm not competing at this point, but it's still kind of a process that I went into the next round. It's already somebody I've beaten. I could have gone and won a gold medal and got smacked in the face again. I was like, I'm out. I'm not dealing with this because it's just not worth the injury. When you're competitive, we watched this in rugby in the Six Nations this year. Young lad made his debut play for England at the Six Nations, scored a try within the first minute. 5 minutes after that, he's been, body rolled out of a breakdown and basically torn his knee in half. Saw the whole thing. It was absolutely horrific. Now that young man will not play rugby again for another 18 months. That's the real issue with high-end sports as well. The injury rate can absolutely ruin you before you've started. And if you stop playing because of an injury, you can resent very much so the fact that you can't play anymore down to injury. So that's a bit of a psychological journey because by the time you've recovered, you may not fully recover. You may not be able to fully perform the way you used to, which means you probably won't get picked for the top tier team, or you may be able to get back to sport, but it won't be at the level you played, which is again psychologically difficult because you know the level you were at and that you could compete at, but no, you can't anymore. And also there's the rigmarole of obviously rehabilitation, getting back to normal, watching other people come up. Because the trouble is when you're at the top spot, your time there is fleeting, as I've said previously, and if you get injured, that's just a gaping window for somebody else to come in and take your slot. So it can be very difficult mentally to kind of accept that you're injured and you won't be playing anymore. And then again, that if that's all you are and you've built yourself up to be somebody that plays for your country, that plays for your city, your top team, at county level, big city representative levels, national level, world level, whatever, to have an injury take that of you can be very difficult because you weren't even planning on coming out. It was taken from you. So it's a very big jump from voluntarily going, I think I'm going to bow out, I've had enough, to being like, sorry mate, you can't play anymore. This isn't who you are, this isn't what you do. Next one is being dropped from the team. This can massively really get in your head. Because if you're giving it your all and you've played to a good degree and you kept moving up, to then be told that there's, sorry mate, nothing we can do, somebody else has come and it fills your spot better, which is the way sport works, that can be very difficult. And especially if there's no other opportunities and you get dropped from the team and that's no longer what you do, alongside with injury, if you keep getting injured and you're giving everything you can because you feel very dedicated to the team, you don't want to let them down, but you're just injuring yourself all the time and say, look, you're too much of a liability, we've got to drop you. It can be very, very... the anger and the lack of understanding, how could you do this to me? You know, I've given you everything and you drop me. It's very, very difficult and it can send you on quite a downward spiral. So if you are in any of those situations, you do need to talk to somebody about it, because it can be very difficult to know who you are after that, because especially if you've been giving everything that you've got to this sport and you've just basically been disregarded for somebody else. And, you know, when you're in that mode, you are going to look at this person and either think, A, oh my God, that person's so good, how did I ever get picked? Was I even that good? And it can send you on a bit of a downward spiral. Or it can be, this guy's not even as good as I am. What's he got that I don't? And you'll question yourself, not even just your identity, like, how on earth have I even got this far? And like, you know, what does he have that I don't? Because I'm clearly better than him. So if you're dropped from a team, and this is, if there's any coaches listening, you do have to be aware of the mental, you know, well-being of the team. I know the whole point of you being a coach is to get the team to win. Completely understand that. But if you are going to drop somebody, you have to be aware and really do a bit of explanation as to why, rather than just going, you're out, sorry, you're not picked. You know, it's very tricky. It's very tricky. And the last one on loss of identity is also the opportunities that come after. Now, if you leave the sport but go into punditry, like more of the top level guys do, you know, they start appearing on interviews and TVs and match analysis, commentating and stuff. You're still involved in the sport. You can still give something back to the sport that you do fall in love with. And, you know, I've fallen in love with a few sports, you know, and I wish I could do more of them, but it's just the way it is. I have other things that I deem more important, and as it goes. And punditry is a good one, coaching, managing, and all these other things. Like, you're still involved in the sport, and that's a good saving grace on coming out of a sport that you played in. You can still be involved in the sport in one way or another. You know, coaching is very rewarding. You can bring young players up. You've got a wealth of experience and knowledge. Commentating, you can give a good perspective because you've been there in the trenches with them and stuff, and, you know, doing punditry and such like. Or if you have been building another identity or something else outside of your sport, and there's an opportunity to go and do that straight away, there's less of the drop off. It's when you kind of get left in limbo because you put all of your time and effort into a sport, you've given everything you can to it, and then next thing you know, you're not doing it anymore. Who are you? What do you do? What is life? And those are the genuine questions you're asking yourself, because you've given everything to it. Because to be at the best and top level of the sport, that's exactly what you have to do. It's difficult when you've got other people pushing you and saying that you were the best, you know, it's fine, you're robbed of it, because it keeps that perpetual going. But the best way to deal with the feeling of a loss of identity after sports, so we've got the reasons now, and what do we do afterwards, is create something that is just reliant on you doing what you do. And that sounds like, what does it even mean by that? So for me, like, yes, I could throw myself at a sport. I could throw myself at my job. What I do is I'm just somebody who enjoys certain things, and I try and do them as much as possible. Therefore, I have a few things that all run along the line. I like skateboarding. I like paddleboarding. I like surfing. I don't do enough of it. I'm probably going to remedy that at some point this summer. And I love spending time with my kids, getting outdoors, and just generally socialising, playing hockey and stuff. So there's loads of different things I can do. I don't dedicate to one thing, because if one of those falls apart, like hockey went out the window because of lockdown, I can still skateboard, I can still paddleboard. If paddleboarding goes down because it's my preferred thing to do, but if the weather's not 100%, I can skateboard. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect weather conditions or, you know, relatively good if I want to go out and skateboard. If it's a cloudy day and the sea's rough, I, you know, go out on the road instead. The key to saving your identity is by having almost multiple ones, or at least having something that isn't dedicated to one single thing. Because if you put all your eggs in that one basket, unfortunately that basket could fall over and all your eggs break. The best thing you can do is quite literally to have multiple things that you find interesting and pursue those, but, you know, be able to draw back and move in and out of those things. And also be aware that, you know, depending on how you left the sport will depend on how long it takes for you to figure these out. But if you're playing a sport and you're doing it at top level and, you know, that is all that you are, just if you can't say there's nothing else you do other than play a sport, just be wary that you may be trying to find something else to move into, because what we don't want is for you to, you know, heaven forbid anything happens, you can't play that sport anymore and you not know who you are. We need to have other forms of identity as well. So that's kind of my take on loss of identity after sport. It's obviously more in depth, and it would really be individual on an individual basis on, you know, those things that I've just said to really help out somebody who feels like that. But in a nutshell, this is why people can feel like they've lost their identity after sport or losing a job. Because again, if your job is all that you are and you don't have that job anymore, you're not, who am I? What do I do? What do I do? What is my purpose? It's a slightly more male problem than female, because men are very task orientated. We have a title, we have a role that we have to perform. And if we're not performing it, then it really messes with our head a little bit. But yeah, it's a very individual case, but that is kind of what loss of identity through sport would kind of cover. Now, the next one. The one that every personal trainer bangs on about, the one that, you know, they're trying to, and everyone's advertising, is the pills, potions, and slimming shakes. Now, excuse the slapping. There's a few things you need to realise with pills, potions, shakes, diet pills, slimming world, fat burners, blah, 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 blah. So first of all, they're not magic. They're not magic. They're not the be all and end all. It's not take this pill because none of these other pills work and we've got the magic bean. No, they don't. In fact, if they do work, they're probably illegal. Well, I say illegal, frowned upon. They're probably more in the steroid end of things, and they're harder to get hold of. They're not commercially advertised, that's for sure. And you've got to be careful with them, because if they're actually going to shred fat and break down fat storage cells in your body, you want to use them sparingly, because they're actually changing the, you know, metabolic and actual physiology of your body. You can even, and I did a mock video on this once, get this stuff called Aqualix, which is a fat melting injection you can put in those hard to reach areas. Now, the problem with that is that it actually destabilizes fat cells in your body, to which point an ultrasound is blasted underneath them to make them break down. Now, that serum is not specific to just fat cells. It just destroys cells around problem areas. And it's like, you know, you've got to be careful there, because any cell can get destabilized. And also what we don't understand is that it's not just energy that's stored in fat cells. It can be, you know, bugs and viruses and toxins and stuff. They all get stored in fat cells, so they can be shedded out later on and they're just pushed away to the side. So anything that claims a quick fix, be careful, because at the end of the day, it can be reversed as quick as it was done. So they're not magic. They are not magic beans. There is no beanstalk. There's no golden goose at the top. There might be a giant. You never know. But they're not... Most of them don't work, to put it in the nicest, bluntest possible way. And I've used them. I've used fat burners. I've used the CLA tablets. I've used the... you know, I've never used appetite suppressors, to be fair, because I don't really like the idea of that. But yeah, it's a trainer. In my naivety, I thought I'd give them a go, see if they work. And most of the time, they don't, because of... The thing is they're not magic. They have to... If you want to lose weight, you have to be in a calorie deficit. Now, being in a calorie deficit is not as easy as it sounds. People make it out to be easier. There's some people very oversimplify the fact that we're just being in a calorie deficit. I'm not losing weight. Well, you're not in a calorie deficit. It's like... As is said in something that's coming soon, there'll be full sections on this that you guys can all look into. It's going to explain all of this, that a calorie deficit is the only way to lose weight. Now, all of these pills, shakes, potions, Slimming World, Weight Watchers, fucking Boo Tea, detox teas, and all this. By the way, detox teas are a load of shit. You have a liver and kidneys. They do all the detoxing you need. In fact, if you had too many toxins in your body like you think that you're being sold, you'd be dead. So just, you know, you can put that. If you want to have some green smoothies and you want to improve your vegetable intake, by all means. But you have 2 to 3 very good organs in your body that are going to go off the top of my head, like literally your liver, your kidneys, and your, I think gallbladder is pretty good at filtering as well. Appendix, I think, is the other one. That are pretty bloody good at filtering stuff out of your body. Yeah, I mean, if that was the case, you die after about a few minutes of being alive. So let's just clear the head on that one. But these, so what they're known at, they're facilitators, not actuators. So what I mean by that is they don't actually make you lose weight. If you take these pills and do nothing, you're not going to lose weight. Raspberry ketones and all these ketone salts and stuff are the same. Now, ketones are a little bit different because they will facilitate you, again, facilitate, not actuate. They will put you into help facilitate you to get into a state of ketosis as long as you are cutting out the carbs. You can't eat a load of carbs and then take some ketones and go, haha, I'm in ketosis. It doesn't work like that. If you want to know more about keto, we can talk about that as well. I've done that before, and it was actually a pretty good long-term sustainable way to lose weight. It wasn't great for looking as muscular as I did when I did the same cut, same calories, but introducing carbs, but it was a very good way to not feel hungry. So there is some merit to that. But it's not a fucking miracle cure. Like, it's not just because you go keto that you lose weight. Everything with weight loss is down to a calorie deficit. These things may facilitate you being in a deficit because they may help you adhere to things. They may help you keep your food in check, because most of the shakes and pills are usually full of like emulsifiers and things that just make you feel full. They don't actually have any nutritional value in them. They just make you feel full so you don't eat. That's what they're there for. And so they can help you get into a deficit. They can help you maybe stay in a deficit. They also, if you're taking fat pills, burners and stuff like that, like CLA, conjugated linolenic acid, which, you know, marginally helps with the breakdown of fat. You can take glutamine and all this. So basically just having a decent balanced diet, because they're in natural foods anyway. You still have to exercise, move, and get in a deficit. So taking these pills may actually make you work out more, which is fine. That's great. If that's what they do, because you think, well, I'm taking these, so I best do something with it. That is, in fact, what's making you lose the weight. It's not the skinny tea and the fucking booty and the slim fast shakes and all this stuff, because you see in the fine print of it as part of a balanced diet, or these don't guarantee weight loss, or they lost weight over a period of 36 weeks, which is nearly a year. So it's like actually what they were doing was pretty much eating in a calorie deficit, watching their exercise for a long period of time over 6 months, and then drop their weight off and manage to keep it off. It's not a miracle. It's not some magic new formula that they found out. They just label it differently to make you feel like it's their way that works. And the trouble is, because a lot of them don't educate you on how a calorie deficit works, these just make you subconsciously stick to it. When you come off of them, you put the weight back on, you go, oh no, it must have been because I wasn't drinking boo tea or this detox tea, or I stopped taking my fat burners. It's like, no, you just stopped adhering to the calorie deficit and being on top of things. Like I, as I said in the beginning of this, have gained weight because I stopped paying attention. The reason you gain weight in the beginning, for the most part, unless there's something very wrong medically with you, is because you stop paying attention. You don't move as much. You start eating a little bit more liberally, a little bit more comfortably, and then you gain weight. Now, in the beginning, you will notice you gain a little bit of weight, but there is a margin, okay? Like, this isn't like... The annoying thing is, I'm going to talk about the marketing in a minute. There's a healthy range that everybody can sit in. For men, it's roughly, I think it's like between like 14 and 20% body fat, which is actually, it sounds like not a lot, but it's quite a lot of range, which is relatively healthy. You can go lower. For guys, you can go lower, and it's okay. You don't want to, unless you're competing, really, you don't want to be sort of single digit body fat. It's a bit low. And for women, it's between 18 and 26% body fat, because women need more body fat because their hormones are regulated by body fat. Men's aren't, which is why we can go lower. And you don't really want to go below 18. I mean, you can get to 14, but you don't really want to go below that, because then you stop having periods and things like that, which is where polycystic ovary syndrome can come in, because it changes your hormones, which is why things get a little bit squirrely. So, which I'm doing work with clients of that at the moment. So there will be a series of podcasts on that coming up. You have a healthy range, but everybody goes for the lower end. You know, there is this thing with Haze, which is health at all sizes, and health at all sizes is funny because health at all sizes only works if you're overweight, which is what I've noticed. If you're in quote unquote good shape, on the lower end of all sizes, you're victimized for being, fat shamers and stuff when you say like, oh, well, I'm healthy here. Well, it's like, well, that's not health at all sizes then. It's a massive hypocrisy. It's like health at all sizes is an excuse for you to be at the top end, if not more into the unhealthy range. And you keep saying that, well, I'm still healthy. You can be too thin. Absolutely. You can be too big. Absolutely. Now, what nobody's trying to do is stay within a healthy range. And I fluctuate. I literally swing in between this healthy range. Like in the winter, I don't mind putting on a little bit more. I don't mind sitting around 20% body fat because I'm not going out and doing too much anyway. But as the summer months come in, we're getting into April now. I probably should have done a little bit more in March, but I didn't. And I know now that I'd rather be in the middle to lower end. The lowest I've ever got to is 12% body fat, and it took a lot of fucking work, and I don't really think it was completely worth it. I'd rather probably sit around 14 and do a little bit more work to make it look more defined. Simple as that. But there is a healthy range. And the thing is, everybody wants to be at the lower end of the healthy range because it looks better. It does look better because we're visual creatures. We're sexually orientated and charged. We want to find a pick a mate or a partner, somebody to reproduce with that has the best possible genetics. And you're going to pick the one that looks the most virile, the most healthy, the most... For guys, the one with the biggest... For women, looking at guys, or whatever your preference is, you want the most physically attractive, which means bigger frame, bigger muscles, which is why height and muscular build drives female attraction. For guys, we like, again, this is generalization, personal preference is what it is, but we like women with hips, boobs, or a bum, or legs, or whatever, just something that shows them that they have, they're good for bearing kids, basically, if we're going to go back to more base means. So, when we go back to caveman times, when this all started, the biggest, strongest, muscliest guy always got the right to mate with the woman who had the biggest, curviest hips and was, the one that actually could have the most kids, because that worked genetically. And the trouble is we haven't evolved too far from that. Yes, everybody has their own personal preference, and you tend to be attracted to people who you would put in your own group. So whatever you think of yourself will then drive you towards people who you think are on your level or slightly above, because we always aim slightly above. And that's where this, attraction comes from. But if you gave anybody an option to be the larger end of the scale or the lower end of the scale, you would always choose the lower end because you feel that makes you more attractive. Unfortunately, that is the way it is. It's a bit of a kicker, but also from a health perspective, you are visualizing that slimmer, more toned, more muscular person with less body fat is healthier because they can move more, they are more physically attractive to look at. Not in all cases, but generally. But this is generally the thing that all these people are preying on, right? So let's take away that other conversation because that's a fucking pit and I'm not getting into that right now. But from a marketing perspective, which we're going to look at, is because basically what they're trying to do is push you down into that more attractive zone, which is what you're going to put where you want to be. Like if you look at, and this is the thing, I've been doing this with people for 8 years nearly, and everybody, every single time will always rather be a slimmer version of themselves. They just will. That is the way it is. Now, some people will say they don't, and that's usually because they're not sure how to get there, or they failed in the past, or they're scared they're going to fail, or there's too much pressure, which is partly where this Haze movement has come in from. Not that you shouldn't feel good about yourself at any size, but it's the whole saying that, being morbidly obese is still healthy. It's not. It's not, because that's a problem. We have science that backs it's a problem. And also, it as I said before, it's a bit of a hypocrisy that it is health at all sizes, yet if you're in relatively good shape and you make a point, you're instantly jumped on, all these health at all size people are like trying to push the top end rather than the lower end. So it's not really health at all sizes, is it? But the marketing used on these, half of these things are sold to fix a problem that didn't really exist. If you can't get into a calorie deficit, it's usually because either A, you don't know what your deficit is, B, the deficit you think you're in isn't a deficit, and that's not the same as you lying. This is a huge, huge point, and I've said this to countless people because if there's any personal trainers listening to this, please, at least for the first couple of times, don't assume that your client is lying. Assume that you may have calculated their deficit wrong. It happens. It has happened countless times with me. We just recalculate. It doesn't take much to go look at the original number and go, look, are you losing weight? We all know, and I'll tell you now on this podcast, you need to be in a 3,500 calorie deficit a week, which is 500 calories a day to lose a pound. Double it, double that total amount to lose 2 pounds, 3 pounds, 4 pounds, whatever, right? If your client or if you are not losing a pound a week and you think you've put them in a deficit, change the number. Drop it down by a little bit. Doesn't even have to be much. Because remember, it's to lose a pound. You could be losing just under a pound. So 100 to 200 calories a day. Start with 100, don't jump. 100 calories a day could be enough to tip them over. Literally done this in my challenges when I want them to win and complete it so they've got the option to carry on. I've dropped them by 100 calories for the last week and they've managed to move it over the line. It doesn't take much. But for you guys that's saying, I am in a calorie deficit, I am counting my calories, I'm being very, very good and diligent, it may just be that the number that was calculated for you is in fact wrong. Not that you got it wrong, not that you are lying, but the number that you're working to isn't actually in fact your deficit. Now, as I said, like if you've got polycystic ovary syndrome, endometriosis, thyroid issues and stuff, your metabolic rate is going to be all over the shop. So it's very, very difficult to judge. You do have to either drop your calories right down, you're going to have to just work a little bit harder. I know that sucks and I can only apologize for the harsh reality of it, but that is what it is. It's not that you are wrong. It's not that you're lying. It's not that you're overeating. It's just that the number you think that you had as a deficit is probably wrong, so you have to go a little bit lower. After the third time and you're making enough drops, then maybe you need to look at something else, and it may just be that you're actually not paying attention. So that is, but always give benefit of the doubt for the first couple of times. Or that, they're basically, advertising is great at this because there's two types of advertising. There's the advertising that will sell you a problem and the solution at the same time. So they create this problem. Cellulite is a massive one. I've done a video on this, which you'll be able to find in some things that are coming up. And cellulite didn't exist, as far as I can tell in my little bit of research that I did, until the 1920s, when a cosmetic company coined the term and told women they had it and they had a cream that they could sell to get rid of it. Now, cellulite is the most normal thing in the world. It is just down to a prolapsing of the fat cells, the collagen, that separates the fat cells from the skin. And the difference is that men tend not to get cellulite because our collagen fibers are slightly different, because I think it's because we tend to hold more muscle mass. So ours are in nice, even crisscross grids, which are very stable. Women's are in oval shapes. You can't see this if you're not watching on the YouTube, but they're in oval shapes, which are more prone to be irregular and prolapse a bit. It doesn't matter. As I've said before, no man actually gives a goddamn crap if you have cellulite. There is not a single woman in my experience of being a man that I've ever been intimate with that I instantly got to this point and the lights are on and, that we undress ourselves or whatever. And I'm like, oh, that's going to be a deal breaker for me, I'm afraid. You've got a bit of dimply bits on your legs or your bum. At this point, a man is just lucky he hasn't fucked it up enough that you still want to sleep with him. Trust me. And if you're in a relationship with somebody, you don't care. Men don't actually care. There might be the odd silly little boy that makes a big thing about it, but trust me, when push comes to shove, we don't really give a shit. It was sold to you by cosmetic companies. It's like all this anti-aging stuff and dyeing your hair and everything else in vanity. It's just designed to make this problem up, saying, oh, well, you've got wrinkles. Yeah? Well, you shouldn't have wrinkles. We can change that for you. And you think, fucking hell, what's wrong with my face? Well, I've got wrinkles. There was nothing wrong with your face in the first place. But these pills, potions and things like, oh, you've got fat you can't get rid of. Actually, what it could be is like, well, actually, I've never really tried that hard to get rid of it. I actually quite like my life as it is. No, you're having a massive problem losing weight. Take this shake. Oh, fuck, yeah, maybe that's the whole problem all along. Or the other type of advertising is you identify a problem and you sell the product. Now, there is an obesity crisis across the world. It's not just in the UK. It's not just here. It's there's a big problem with obesity right now because we've never lived in this much abundance and we're still not wired to tone it down a bit. And they'll sell you a quick fix. And this is going to be part of a bigger thing that I'm doing later on, and you'll see it come up. But I'm going to hint to it now. The advertising that works on this is either, as I said, the first type of product will just create some, like if you ever watched a JML advert, it is fucking hilarious because it's literally some poor sap pretending to have the worst possible time doing a simple job and then going, aha, but our product solves it. So it was never a problem in the first place. Nobody has ever had that bad of a day painting a wall and falling off the ladder and dashing paint everywhere that they need to go buy X product. Now, you may look at it and think, actually, that probably would make things a lot easier. I'll give it a go. But they have to make this elaborate story up to make you think, oh, God, I don't want that happening to me, when it wasn't going to happen in the first place. The other kind, which are looking at selling you a solution to a problem that's already out there, aren't preying on you because you are weak. They're not preying on you because you're stupid. They're preying on you because you are miserable. And that is something completely different. And that will be a whole topic that I'm going to go into. But please don't think you've fallen for these pills, potions, and things like that before because you're stupid. You're not stupid. You know that there's a risk involved in it. You know they're probably not going to work. But you are miserable enough that you'll try it anyway because you just want to get out of the situation. And they know that. They absolutely know that. Trouble is you don't. So when they start, and it's all about the boldest claim possible. As long as they don't actually say it's going to work, but they make claims that it could work, and it's 99% sure it's going to work. The thing is, you end up being that 0.1%, which is actually a larger percentage, and you feel bad about it. But the end of the day is they're all designed around the pretense. All these companies and all that, they all know that you just need to be in a calorie deficit. They know that because that's science. That's simple science and mathematics and thermogenics. That's just how it works. But they know that you don't potentially know that. Or they know that you have been told that you've been lying before. And they know that you've been told that, you're in a deficit and it still didn't work. And it's like, this is why they say diets don't work. Diets absolutely do work. Every single diet on the planet works. That's the cool thing, is that any diet you pick will work as long as you're in a deficit. It's actually marvelous news for everybody who goes, oh, there's not a diet that works for me. Yes, there is. Every single diet on the planet will work for you if you're in a calorie deficit. The diet you pick is simply just designed to keep you to stick to it. That's it. That's all you have to do is stick to it. So pick the one you like the most. Do you like eating Mediterranean food? Do the Mediterranean diet. Do you like the idea of eating seasonally? Do the Nordic diet. Do you like the idea of only eating, having a high-fat, low-carb diet? Do keto. Do you like the idea of cutting all fats out and just eating more pasta and grains? Do a low-fat diet. Don't completely knock them out, though, because there are essential fats that you need. Jesus Christ, there's 1,000 diets out there, and they all do the same thing. Facilitate a calorie deficit. So going on that side of things, the pills and potions and everything else, they're only just to help you stay in a deficit. They don't actually do anything more than that. Because if they did, they'd be far more ready available. Doctors would be prescribing them, and you wouldn't really need to do half the work. Because it always comes back to this. You still take all these pills and potions, you still end up having to do the work anyway. So don't be suckered in. That's not the right word. It's like, but just be aware that if you're going to take them because they're going to keep you on track, do it. But don't think that they're the reason that you were actually losing weight. It was because you were adhering to a calorie deficit and you made it last. So yeah, that's today's topics. Thank you very much for listening. As always, any ideas, any subjects you want me to cover, just drop me a comment and I'm more than happy to go over them. We've got some really cool stuff coming soon. It has now been paid for and it's being bought, and I cannot wait to show you all, but I'm not going to tell you what it is just yet until I get some progress reports back, and then I can let you know where we're going to go. But it's going to be pretty damn special. I'm quite excited about it. Hopefully we come out of lockdown in the next couple of weeks, at least to the next stage of it, and we can start doing a bit more. And if you guys are apprehensive, you're not sure about what's going on, because I know anxiety has been a bit of a big one coming out of lockdown, please reach out. Let's start working together, and I will start helping you like I am with everybody else. So take care, everybody. Peace and love, and I'll speak to you all soon. Bye-bye.